Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about how hot it is today, and we do this webinar every year. It's not normally warm. First time ever we've done it, and it's more than 25 degrees outside, so we're all very, very hot. Great to see so many of you have joined today. While we're doing the housekeeping, why don't you tell us how hot it is where you are? Maybe from the weather forecast. We'll be getting on to measuring inside temperatures soon. You're going to hear all about that later. So as you can see, I'm joined today by three people. My amazing colleague Shelly, who is no stranger to our webinars. She'll be talking soon about the TUC's work in this area about workplace temperatures. We've also got Miranda and Frieda from Heat Strike, and they will be telling you about the work and the campaigning that Heat Strike are doing to campaign for a maximum workplace temperature. So some of our usual webinar housekeeping. Great that you're chatting already. I'm loving to see how warm it is in all these locations all over the UK. We are recording today, as we always do. If you miss anything, don't worry, we will send you a link to the recording. We'll make sure that any resources that we talk about or that we share with you are included in that email. We are going to take some questions from the audience. So at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A button. Post any questions for our panel there, and we'll get to those after we've heard from them. We've, of course, got captions. You can click the CC button again at the bottom of the screen to follow along with live captions if you would like to. Couple of bits that are different from usual. If you've got a phone handy, keep that within reach, because we'll be sharing a QR code with you later in the webinar. You might find it useful to click on, to use your phone to access that link a bit later. And some really exciting news for any of you who are health and safety reps. You'll all be familiar with the Brown Book, Safety Regulation Safety Committee's book, which is so important to all of you in your role. We hear that safety reps use this all the time, and it's a great reference for them. We have a new version. This arrived yesterday. We have tens of thousands of copies waiting for safety reps to order. So we're going to put a link in the chat shortly. We'll keep posting that link throughout the webinar because it's going to keep disappearing. It's just appeared there now. Please do click on the link, order copies for you, for your branch, for other safety reps in your workplace. We think it looks fantastic. It's still brown, and as you can see, we've included for the first time Brown Book on the cover. It's the contents are the same as it always has been, all the important information that you need. So do order some copies. Right, that's enough from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Shelly to talk us through what the TUC are doing on this area of workplace temperatures.
Thanks very much for that, Anna. And I just echo what you said there about the Brown Book. It is, of course, the Bible. I saw Maria in the chat said there, it's great to wave under the nose of the bosses, because you, health and safety reps out there, will know you've got more rights than any other rep in the union. And that is your guide to everything that you've got the right to do. So on that note, I'm going to speak in general terms about the issue of working in hot temperatures, talk through what we can expect from employers, and then talk about how you can organise, how you can take action as reps and members to keep yourself and your workmates safe in the heat wave. So obviously working in heat waves isn't new. It's been a concern on our agenda for some time, but it is a bigger risk in certain jobs and sectors. And as heat waves are lasting twice as long now as they did 50 years ago, according to climate scientists, and we have just this week been warned that we're about to have the hottest summer ever, that of course brings with it more risk, and it brings more opportunity to take action. It's more urgent and more incentive for us to get organised. So what exactly are the risks? Well, if you're consistently working in temperatures beyond around 24 degrees Celsius, you're likely to experience things like headaches, lower levels of concentration, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, dehydration. You increase your risk of developing some long-term health problems associated with your vital organs, heart conditions, diabetes as well. And if you're working outdoors, you increase your likelihood of things like sunburn, skin cancer, 3 times more likely to develop skin cancer if you're regularly working outdoors. In the worst cases, workers have collapsed and died in heat waves. In 2020, in fact, so not even that long ago, 2,500 people died in that heat wave. There are also some workers who will be at increased or particular risk from working in hot weather because of their existing health conditions or pregnancy or the menopause. There's something to think about there. Temperatures in the workplace are covered by the Workplace Health, Safety and Welfare Regulations 1992. Those of you who are health and safety reps will be very familiar with those. They also relate to things like toilets, which place a legal obligation on employers to provide a reasonable temperature in the workplace. Now, that's not very specific, is it? But reasonable, we would say, is what is commonly considered as room temperature, a comfortable ambient temperature of around 20 degrees Celsius is where most workplaces should be aiming to be the majority of the time. Now, the law doesn't stipulate a minimum temperature in workplace, but those regulations suggest, or the guidance for those regulations suggest that the temperature in workrooms should normally be at least 16 degrees Celsius, or 13 if a lot of the work being done indoors is involving some kind of severe physical effort, strenuous work. But those same regulations do not lay down a maximum temperature. So you can cite the TUC's position, which is that at 24 degrees Celsius, employers must begin to take action to reduce the temperature indoors, and 30 degrees Celsius should be an absolute maximum, 27 if it's strenuous work or a safety critical job. If you're driving a train, for example, you're responsible for hundreds of lives at a time. There is absolutely no way that you should be expected to sustain those kind of temperatures levels inside the cab. So that is an absolute limit for when the work should stop. But as I say, 24 degrees should be the trigger point for employers putting in control measures, bringing down the temperature to make sure you're getting back to that aim of around room temperature. I'll use this opportunity actually to plug our petition. So I said there's no maximum working temperature in the regulations, but the Labour Party in its manifesto for the election last year said it was going to introduce a maximum working temperature. We've not seen them do it yet, but I know the Health and Safety Executive is currently reviewing those regulations. We want to see a maximum working temperature put in there. So if you've not signed our petition to the government to introduce one yet, please do give it a sign. I know one of my colleagues is going to be posting that in the chat now. So if the workplace reaches temperatures beyond what is reasonable, unless you're working in something like a furnace or a kitchen or somewhere where it's supposed to be hot and you would therefore expect to have other measures in place, then the work should stop for the sake of your own safety. And furthermore, workplace temperature should be covered in your employer's risk assessment anyway. It should be clear what control measures are in place to regulate temperature. There should be regular monitoring of the temperature. And during a heat wave, that monitoring should become more frequent. Now, depending on the outcome of the risk assessment, depending on the type of job, the workplace, there'll be certain steps that employers should be taking. So one, on a regular basis, like air conditioning, provision of cold water, that should be happening all the time if it's hot. And two, in the event of a heat wave. So that's where you might expect some more extraordinary measures to be put in place, like adjusting shift times to account for people getting on trains when it's particularly hot, or relaxing dress codes so they're not expected to wear a blazer all the time or a tie, things like that that are making you unnecessarily hot. If you're working outdoors, they should be providing you with sunscreen. They should be providing you with protective clothing to cover your neck, your shoulders, those places where you're more susceptible to sunburn. This is PPE. This is personal protective equipment. We often think of PPE as being something, like mouth coverings, things that you get in hospitals. No, PPE is anywhere where there's a risk, and it's protective clothing or equipment that can be used to keep you safe and healthy. And crucially, also, if you're working outside, employers should be putting in place respite from the sun. So breaks where you have some time away, especially at that sort of midday to 2 or 3 p.m. where the sun is at its peak. Health surveillance or medical screening may also be something that is required for staff, especially if they've got those certain medical conditions or they're pregnant or something like that and they're at increased risk. Now, additionally, employers are required to investigate any reports of illnesses that may be caused by working in hot temperatures. And you as a safety rep, you've got access to that data and you can investigate that as well. I do in this instance really recommend the advice on working in the heat from the Health and Safety Executive on their website, where they go into more detail of what's expected of employers, what's in those regulations, and the kinds of measures that could be taken as control measures. Education and training is also really important to mention. So employers should be providing all staff with education and training on environmental monitoring and recording, what they're doing, what's expected of you, what those safe systems of work are, what the preventative measures are that they've got in place, and what your role is in making sure they're carried out, and the awareness of the health risks as well, especially in considering what sector you're in or what kind of job you're doing. Now, onto what unions and reps can do. And there's some really practical things that we can be doing. Union safety reps, of course, have got the right to carry out inspections. You can use thermometers. That's one easy way to monitor working temperatures and report that back to management if it's not safe. The TUC is organising a week of action starting on Monday, the 14th of July. This is often one of the hottest weeks of the year. And we're asking health and safety reps to sign up this week of action and carry out a workplace inspection within that week, which will focus on inspecting temperatures in your workplaces. We'll be providing you with thermometers if you've not already got one. And we're wanting to get as many reps as possible to take part in this collective action, demonstrate that workplaces in many instances are too hot, that employers need to act, but also so does the government by introducing that clearer regulation, introducing a maximum working temperature. We're going to be asking you to get involved in that week of action, to do an inspection, and then report it back to us. So you'll get a TUC education credential at the end of it. But more than that, you'll be part of a nationwide action and campaign for change to keep workers safe. And we'll have that data of how hot all these different workplaces across Britain are within that particular week, in different sectors, in different industries. And that'll be a really useful thing to us to feed back to the government as well, adding that pressure for our national campaign for a maximum working temperature. Aside from that, you can get members together, you can discuss what the issues are, maybe launch a survey to demonstrate to management what the scale of the problem is and get members to start recording things on a more regular basis. You can deliver those demands. What exactly is it that the employee needs to change? Is the PPE satisfactory? Are they providing water on a regular basis? Can changes be made to shift patterns to avoid the most extreme temperatures or sun exposure? And it's often something that employers can quite easily respond to with practical changes as well, which will help build that confidence in your membership, give you a springboard as well for more union organising capacity on other issues. I know Miranda and Frieda are going to come up with some more ideas of action you can take in that week of action as well, which is really exciting. And I'm really pleased that TUC is working with Heat Strike in this campaign. But employers don't always respond to our demands immediately. And some things like ventilation, for example, can be a really expensive investment. Adjusting shifts can mean taking on more staff or losing business at peak times. And we all know that there are many bosses who are more interested, frankly, in profits than in the health and safety and the lives of workers. So there may be additional action to consider. And union branches have escalated to all kinds of action on this. And I just want to give you a few examples. One group of shop workers issued a union improvement notice to employers when temperatures kept exceeding 25 degrees Celsius on the shop floor. A group of railway workers cited Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act. If you're a regular webinar goer, you'll be familiar with that, but that gives you the right to remove yourself from the workplace. They removed themselves from the workplace in that instance until bosses agreed to start providing cold bottled water throughout the hot shift. When one teacher was told he couldn't wear shorts to work during a heat wave, the following day, every member of the union in that school came in wearing shorts in solidarity, and management quickly changed their dress code policy. All of these examples and more can be found in our visual learning tool for reps and members, which is called Too Hot, Too Cold, which you'll find in the chat a link to as well. Now, a couple of years ago, the summer temperatures reached 40 degrees Celsius, and the CWU union reached a national agreement with Royal Mail that postal workers would not go out on rounds and vans without aircon would not be used. It's an excellent example of a union securing a clear and actionable policy with clear additional demands as well for reps to organise around across workplaces in order to safeguard their members' health. But it took the deaths of Phil Bentham and Mark Creamer in 2020 for Royal Mail to take years-long demands seriously. 2 deaths which were entirely preventable, but happened on the job in the heat because they were out in conditions totally unfit for the average working man or woman. So let us be clear, every day of the year, no job, no company, no profit margin is worth more than our lives, our limbs, our health, and our safety. If the work has to stop, the work has to stop. You are protected from detriment, be that dismissal, the docking of your pay, any other form of discrimination under Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act by removing yourself from the workplace if you feel that you are in imminent or serious danger. Speak to your rep, take advice from your union officers, and know that whatever action you take together, you have the support of your union behind you, you have the support of the TUC and the Heat Strike campaign. If you already plan to be part of the week of action, you've got some early ideas maybe about what kind of organising you want to do in your workplaces around working in the heat, then you may also be interested in taking part in a seminar, which is next week. If you've not already heard about it, it's very late notice now, and it is in London, I apologise, in our headquarters. So apologies for those of you who won't be able to make it, but we've got a few spots left if anyone's interested or wants to get particularly organised. Thank you so much for joining the call today, and I'll hand you back over to Anna.
Thanks, Shelley. That was a fantastic introduction to our rights, what the law says on this, what the law doesn't say, crucially, because that's what we're campaigning on. And I love, love, love hearing about what reps have achieved in the workplaces and the changes they've been able to make. Before I hand over to Miranda and Frieda, I'm just going to address a couple of the questions that have come up in the chat already. Quite a few of you are asking about the thermometers that we talked about for Inspections Week, for Heat Week, that's in July. They've not been sent out yet. If you've registered, you'll be getting those soon. They'll be coming to you in the next week, maybe 2 weeks. So please don't think you've missed out. There's still plenty of time to register. So if you want to take part, do that. What we're going to do is everyone who registers, we will send you afterwards a little form where you can report back to us what the situation was in your workplace, what the temperature was, and what you're doing about it to make a change. So don't worry, you've not missed out on any thermometers just yet. We also had a question that, Shelley, you might want to speak to this one. Somebody asked, does it have to be a health and safety rep to do the temperature check, or can it be any rep? I just wondered what your thoughts were on this regarding permission around inspections and that sort of area.
Yeah, obviously health and safety reps have got the right to carry out an inspection, and often you do work with employers to kind of register when that's going to happen, make sure you've got the time off to carry that out. But we are sending out those thermometers to anybody who signs up, really. And if you are a rep, and I mean, it's literally just a handheld thermometer, and you want to go out and measure that when you're kind of on your facility time anyway or something, then go ahead and order one. I think it obviously might not be an actual health and safety inspection, but you can still monitor that and get in touch with us with what it said. It'd still be interesting to know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shelley. And I'm going to hand over to Miranda and Frieda in a second. While they're speaking, we've had someone ask if you spoke about the TUC position on maximum temperatures and what it should be. Somebody asked if we've got that written down anywhere. If we do, can we share it so that they can point employers towards that when they're talking to them? Can I leave that with you while Miranda and Frieda are talking about their campaign? Amazing. Okay. Enough from us. I'll hand you over now to our brilliant colleagues from the Heat Strike campaign. They're going to tell us about their work and their campaign.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Shelley and Anna. It's a real honour to be here. And so exciting to be talking to all of you today about Heat Strike. So we are Heat Strike. We are a campaign that was started by a group of climate activists who are also interested in workers' rights, who have come together to campaign on both climate and workers' rights during extreme heat, and looking at sort of heat in the UK as a moment where we can really mobilise and win demands, because that's a moment where people feel the climate crisis is here. So when we have extreme heat in this country, suddenly the climate crisis doesn't feel like this really far away thing anymore. It feels real and present, and we're really aware of how it affects us all. So next slide. I want to start with a little question that you can answer in the chat. So
Miranda, can I just stop you? We've lost your sound for a second.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, before we get into it and get into all the details, it'd be really good to hear from all of you. We know that in 2022, we reached 40 degrees in the UK, which was the hottest day on record. I remember what I was doing that day. I actually had COVID that day. So I had two big crises of the climate crisis and the COVID crisis all happening to me all at once. And I live in quite a small, pokey flat without an outside. So that wasn't very fun. But I wasn't actually working because I was sick. It'd be really interesting if you've got stories of how you were affected by that day. And especially if you were working, how did it affect your work? Please put those in the chat. We've been going around to like lots of different union conferences and events and hearing from different workers, and we've heard some incredible stories from all sorts of different industries and sectors, like firefighters. When we went to the FBU conference, everyone that I spoke to had a story to tell about heat, and so many of them reported that on that day, like that they were really at crisis point, and like they were so close to becoming overwhelmed. We've got, but as the chat's moving so fast, it's hard to see. Yeah, teacher in the classroom, a bus driver. Yeah, buses get really hot. Someone was recording a webinar. Laptops overheating and shutting down. They obviously agree with our campaign, and the laptops went on heat strike. We approve. We've got some robot allies there already. Menopause policy, someone's written about. That's a really good point, because heat affects menopause. Absolutely. I used to be a teacher, and classrooms get unbearable when it's hot because it's so many bodies in a small room.
Miranda, before you continue, sorry, just one thing I just want to say to the audience. We're getting a lot of you asking for all the links we've been talking about. We appreciate they disappear from the chat very quickly because there's so many of you online, so they're just sort of zooming up. We will make sure that everything we're talking about, thermometers, petition, brown book, you name it, it's going to be shared in the email, which will get sent out to you later today. So please don't think you're going to miss out. I mean, one just was posted and it's already disappeared. So back to you, Miranda. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure people didn't think they were going to miss out.
Yeah, thank you. And it gave me a chance to look at the chat. I've noticed Barbara has said that on the hot day, you booked a day of annual leave as it wasn't safe to operate, which is really interesting, actually, that you did that. And it sounds like it was the right move as well. So thank you for sharing some of those stories with us. Next slide, please. So we are going to play a video in a sec. Hopefully the sound works. It will takes about 5 minutes, but what you're about to see is Ricardo from the Fire Brigades Union, who we did an online rally with last year. He's talking about how heat affects work, and we're all about bringing climate and labour organisers together. So we've been working really closely with the FBU. They're one of our key allies. This video was made last year, but it's no less relevant now. Like, we've already seen the hottest start to May on record in the UK, and if you look, like, the weather now is really hot. So it's, in many ways more relevant now than it was last year. So let's play it.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Noala. And look, thank you for inviting us to this incredibly important rally this morning, and what is such an important initiative. Now, I suppose my contribution may be slightly different, because although, as I'm about to set out, the struggle is the same, the consequences, given the nature of our profession and our trade as firefighters, is slightly different. But I want to start by setting out how severe a workplace issue this is for FBU members, for firefighters, in the here and now. So this isn't abstract. This isn't a future coming over the hill issue. This isn't an emerging issue. It's an incredibly relevant and severe and growing issue in the here and now for firefighters. On to about one incident, the Yarnell Hill fire in Arizona in 2013 was the biggest loss of firefighter lives at a single incident since the World Trade Center. 19 of the Granite Mountain hotshots were killed in one instance, battling a wildfire. You know, just this week, last week, we've seen firefighters in California hospitalized. You know, at the other end of extreme weather events, you know, we've sadly seen a firefighter in Germany die whilst trying to protect his community from floods. So this is a workplace issue that is taking the lives and the health of firefighters ever more regularly all over the world as we speak. And look, I've done 18 years fighting fires in Essex. I can speak firsthand. These fires are brutal. No element of firefighting is easy, but these particular fires, wildfires caused by heat waves, are absolutely brutal. The extreme temperatures you're working at, the fire spreads at speeds faster than a firefighter can move. You can't hear. Not a lot of people realize this, but they're incredibly loud. And your PPE in those temperatures can become as much as a hazard to you as it does a protection. But despite these incidents growing in regularity and severity, you know, despite heat waves being in the National Risk Register since 2008, wildfire being added to the National Risk Register in 2013, a register that fire services and government should be preparing for. Instead, what we've seen them do is absolutely decimate the fire and rescue service. So we're not just fighting this growing risk in regularity and severity, but since 2010, we've seen 12,000 firefighters cut, and all the resources and equipment that go with that. We had 30% of central government funding cut at a time where we should be growing and funding the service to be able to be resilient and prepare for this risk, but we're absolutely unprepared. And look, we've been absolutely let down by government and policymakers and chief fire officers in preparing to be on the front line of a climate crisis. There's consequences to that. You know, we're not just seeing the wildfires increase as we see in temperatures soar, but where they're happening, we're seeing change. We're now seeing them in what we call a rural-urban interface. They're no longer out just in wildland. We're seeing them reach urban areas. I mean, in that 19th of July heat wave in 2022 was the busiest day for London Fire Brigade, London, since World War II. We saw firefighters hospitalized that day, one after the other after the other. They were desperately calling for backup and were told there simply wasn't any coming, whilst fire engines sat dormant and empty all over the capital because we simply don't have enough workers, enough firefighters to crew them. It's an absolute scandal. 15 major incidents were called across the UK on that day. This is a growing incident, and although we saw firefighters hospitalised through burns, through heat exhaustion, one after the other through these heat waves, it's not just the immediate effects that are harming workers in the fire and rescue service. You know, we've seen by the work, and I'd urge you all to look at work done by Professor Anna Stetz and her team at UCLan, evidencing the link between the sort of exposures at these incidents and the sorts of temperatures at these incidents, linking to cancer and other occupational diseases in the fire and rescue service. So we can't even really quantify the damage done to firefighters by these extreme weather events. So look, I suppose the question is, what do we do about this? We heard some fantastic examples from Shelly earlier about what collective action we can take in the workplace to protect our safety. But we need to also be looking at what collective action in the workplace can we take to start demanding and delivering the solutions to the root causes of this climate crisis, which absolutely is a workers' issue, it is a class issue. Therefore, we have to be organising and searching for the solutions within our work. Thank you, Clara. Thank you.
So that was Ricardo. Thank you for listening to that. I know it's a little bit long, but I think what he has to say is really important. And, you know, firefighters are really on the front lines of this, and it's really good to hear from them. But many other professions are really affected, and many other different types of workplaces are made unsafe, sometimes very seriously unsafe by heat. So it's great to see so many different unions represented here, and so many of you here with your different experiences. So yeah, just getting into the demands of our campaign. So we have adopted the demands of the Cool It campaign. So our first two demands. So the first one is to set a maximum working temperature. There isn't currently one in this country. And the recommendation, as I think Shelly already mentioned, is a maximum indoor working temperature of 36 degrees and 27 degrees for those doing strenuous work. And Shelly mentioned as well that there should be adjustments happening when it goes above 24 degrees. And then for anyone who can't work because it's not safe to do so due to the heat, there should be a heatwave furlough scheme so that no one loses out on pay, or has to bear the cost of the climate crisis through their own wages. And then our third demand is a climate action plan, because we know it's not enough just to put measures in place to protect workers. We actually need to like mitigate against the climate crisis so we don't, so that we can stop it from getting even worse. So we know the UK government's climate plan has been ruled illegally inadequate. We know they're not doing enough. So we're calling on the government to really step up and take action on climate as well to protect us all. We also have a model motion. If you want to pass a motion in support of our campaign in your branches and where you work and in whatever context is appropriate, we would absolutely love you to do that. If you sign up via our website, which we'll be sharing links for very soon, so don't worry about that, you can access our model motion. And if you sign up as well, you're welcome to email us and we can support you in getting motions passed as well. Next slide. So case study, we can follow the example of the CWU, who successfully negotiated for adaptations from heat for postal workers. So they successfully negotiated with the Royal Mail to upgrade postal uniforms. And the new clothing now meets high safety standards for protecting against harmful UV radiation, which is really important because we know that skin cancer is on the rise in the UK, and outdoor workers are at triple the risk of everyone else of getting skin cancer. So that was a really important win by the CWU, an example of how you can bargain and negotiate for mitigations against heat in your workplace. So we are Heat Strike. I'm going to get Frieda and I will get into the details of what our campaign sort of means and what we're asking people to do and how to get involved in a minute. But an interesting thing about our campaign is we have a plan that kicks in when we get extreme heat in this country. The reason for that is that we believe that heat, as I said earlier, is a moment where we can mobilize people on this issue. So when you actually feel hot, when you actually feel it in your body that this is real, this is happening, this is not normal, that's when you're ready to take action and do something. And that's when we can get some serious attention and like media and build some momentum for this campaign and win our maximum working temperature, which should be a really reasonable demand of the government. So we are going to share a poll and we want you to guess, what do you think is our threshold temperature? So it's not the temperature that we're calling for as the maximum working temperature, the temperature that we think is the temperature where people feel this is extreme heat, this isn't normal, this isn't just a hot summer, this is like out of the ordinary heat.
So there should be a poll appearing on your screen now. Oh, great. We can see it in live and the results are coming in. There's a lot of options on the poll. As you can see, it starts at 27 degrees C and it goes up to 38. So do scroll up and down in order to vote. There's still quite a lot of you who've not voted, so we'll keep it running. And there's a couple of you who have posted in the chat to say they can't see the poll. I appreciate it might be tricky on some devices. And someone said they would say 27. So we'll just let a couple more people vote. Okay, it's kind of slowing down a bit. Okay, it looks like maybe voting stopped. So let's leave that on the screen for a minute or two to let Miranda, Frieda, Shelly comment on it if they want.
I can't actually see the results of the poll.
Sorry, they'll be coming live now.
Oh, okay.
I think. Can they be seen now?
Yes.
There we go.
Really interesting.
Yeah, about a quarter of you thought 27, about another quarter thought 30. Some people thought 28, a few thought some of the other ones. Our trigger temperature is actually 36 degrees. Now, that's not because we think that lower temperatures are perfectly fine to work in. We don't, but we think 36 degrees is the temperature where that like people are no longer sort of feeling like, okay, we're having a hot summer. This is the temperature where people are like, this is out of the ordinary. This is the climate crisis. This isn't safe. This is extreme heat. So that's when our rapid response kicks in, and we'll talk more about in a sec about what that means. So yeah, next slide, please. And the next.
Should we take the poll off the screen now? Because I think everyone can. Yeah, it's gone.
So when we get to 36 degrees, we will call the heat strike. We know we're not a trade union and we can't call a official strike, but heat strike could mean different things depending on who you are and where you are and what could work for you. So it could literally mean walking out of work using your rights under Section 44, which I'm going to explain about in a minute, and which it's important to be informed about if you do want to do it, and take various steps before doing it as well. So we'll get into that in a minute. It could mean going slow at work. So you turn up to work, but you do the minimum and you make sure that you are not exerting yourself in a way that's dangerous. Could be working from home. It might mean sort of having pre-negotiated some mitigations that you can then celebrate when it's hot. You might have some wins to celebrate. It could mean sort of doing a lunchtime walkout, standing outside your place of work with a banner that says heat strike, sharing it with us. It could mean putting heat strike posters up where you work, our Section 44 posters, informing people of their rights. It could mean organising around heat and using that as a moment to start this conversation with your colleagues about how you're going to organise around heat in your workplace. Whatever you do, the really important thing is that you share it with us. So if you do take a photo and put it on social media, use the hashtag heat strike or too hot to work. We really want to amplify some of these stories. So we've heard so many like shocking and horrifying, incredible stories of how heat affects people's jobs, but you know, this isn't part of the discussion. Like as a public, we're not hearing these stories. So we really want to share like your stories of how heat is affecting you. And something we found is that actually having this conversation is something that's quite uniting, because like just about all of us can understand how horrible it is to be too hot and to be forced to sort of do things and be productive when you're just too hot, and can understand that it can become dangerous as well. So we want to start this conversation, make some noise, share what's going on for people, and build pressure on the government to meet our demands. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Section 44. So Section 44 is a right we have under the Employment Act. And in the UK, if you have a reasonable belief that there's a serious or imminent danger to your health or safety, or that of others around you, by working or by travelling to and from work, you do have the right to refuse to work under Section 44. But how does this actually work in practice? So as Shelly said, if temperatures go above 24 degrees, that's when reps should start asking for adjustments to be implemented. So you need to start off by asking for reasonable adjustments, talking to your employer, seeing what can be done to make people safe in the workplace when it gets hot. If the temperatures go above 30 degrees and the adjustments are not adequate and you are not safe, you can put safety first and refuse to work. Before doing this, though, you should have clear evidence and tracked that you have approached your employer, you've requested these adjustments, and you also need to make a record of the temperature and make a record of any other issues you believe may be affecting your work or your journey to work and posing a serious threat. So you might want to bring in your own thermometer and take a photo, and then let your employer know you believe it's unsafe to work. You need to explain that you are able and willing to do so, but that it's unsafe. And at that point, they may need to make adjustments. If these adjustments do make it safe, you must continue to work. If they don't make reasonable adjustments, then you can refuse to work. And if you feel like you're in danger, then you do need to protect yourself. You do need to make sure you followed these steps. I wouldn't recommend doing this without, like we're running a Section 44 training, and making sure that you really know your rights, that you've followed the steps and you've put everything in place, speak to your union, that sort of thing. It should be a last resort, and to be used to protect your own safety and those around you. Sometimes just like employers knowing that people know their rights around Section 44 is enough. So a lot of people are not aware we have these rights, and often you don't actually need to use them, but just by informing your employer that you know that you have this right and you could use it is enough to make them make the adjustments. The important thing about an important thing to note about Section 44 is that it's an individual right. So you don't actually have to be in a union to use it, and it's not a strike. So people need to exercise this right on an individual basis. So if more than one person uses Section 44 in a workplace, that's okay, but they each need to be sort of doing all the steps independently of each other and for themselves. It's not like it's not collective action, it's an individual right that you have. But as long as each individual holds the reasonable belief that they're in serious and imminent danger, then they have that right. If you are, you should contact your union for advice and attend our Section 44 training if you're thinking this is something that might be relevant to you. So our next slide. So we are working with lots of trade unions. So we have had motions in support passed by the TUC, the Fire Brigades Union, Equity and the Bakers Union. And we're talking to lots more unions and have been around lots of conferences and speaking to health and safety reps. We'd love to have motions passed by all of these unions on this slide and many more. So if that's something you think you can help us with, that would be great. Please get in touch with us, and we can talk about how we can make that happen. Next slide, please. We're not just working with trade unions, we're also working with climate groups, disability rights groups. Like all of these things that we're talking about are exacerbated even more when for disabled people. And we're talking to NGOs, faith groups, and building a coalition. So I think that the government and power holders often get quite scared when groups that don't normally work together come together. So with this campaign, we're trying to bring different sections of movement together to really put pressure on for this right. Next slide, please. So this is our QR code to sign up. We really want to hear from you and be in touch with you. We want you to be able to access all our resources. So get your phones out now, scan the QR code, and you can sign up on our website. If you don't want to scan the QR code, or that's tricky, you can also just type Heat Strike UK into your browser and you'll get the same page, and you can sign up via our website. I can see some people in the chat saying that you can't see the screen. If you can't see the screen, you can just type heatstrike.uk into your browser and you'll get up the page. So now is a really good time to do that. I'm going to pause and hand over to Frieda, but maybe if we give you a minute to do that before we carry on.
Yeah, don't worry if you can't see it now. We will make sure that all these links are included in the email that we send you later. We appreciate there's been a lot of extra resources today. You're not going to miss out if you miss it like on the screen.
Great. Okay, so hoping everyone is scanning away on this QR code. I'll leave it on for one more second. I hope everyone can hear me okay, by the way. And cool, let's move on. We're almost done. Appreciate a lot of information for a hot day. So we are now finally going to let you know about Turn Up the Heat Week, which Shelly already mentioned earlier. So what's been happening since Heat Strike got set up in 2023 was that we had just come out of this extreme heat wave in 2022. We had set up Heat Strike, all kinds of unions started to sign up, people were supporting it, and we were so ready to go once we hit 36 degrees. And then for 2 years in a row, it just didn't get to 36 degrees. And lots of groups are like really up for doing something. We really want to push for maximum work temperature. We don't just want to sit around and wait for the 36 degrees to happen. Although, to be honest, it's quite likely to happen this summer because it's already so hot. But to do other things to build up pressure on the government and our employers, we're going to have Turn Up the Heat Week in the week of the 14th of July. As Shelly said, on average, that is the hottest week of the year in the UK. So it's quite likely that the temperatures are going to be reasonably high, and it's going to be a good week to have these conversations with people at our workplace and our politicians about how we're already affected by extreme heat and need them to take action on it. So I know this can be a little bit confusing. So just to disentangle this for a second, there are two different things going on here. There's the heat strike, when we call on people around the UK to work less, stop working altogether, show solidarity. That's still happening when we hit the 36 degrees. So that's one thing. Turn Up the Heat Week is just happening in that week of the 14th of July. We're not asking people to stop working, unless it does get to 36 degrees in that week. It's just a week of action when there are several different ways in which people can raise the issue of heat. So the great thing about the Heat Strike Coalition, as Miranda just said, is that it's a real range of different groups with different sort of strengths. There's sort of like very decentralized grassroots groups, there's unions, there's sort of more centralized campaigning groups. And so there are different themed days in this week. So all these groups can take part in different ways on different days. No one is expecting one individual to do different things on every single day of that week. That would be a bit much. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the days that are most relevant to you guys if you want to take action within the context of your workplace and your unions. So Workers' Wednesday is when we're encouraging people around the UK to just do a little lunchtime walkout. So that would just involve walking out. If you're in a school, I think it's going to be the last week before the summer holidays, I think, if you work in a school. So it could be the perfect week to do a lunchtime walkout. I think in a lot of other work settings, hopefully it would be fairly straightforward. You can just hold a banner or placards if that's easier to organize. Hand out leaflets to your colleagues if you want. There are all these materials that we're going to send to you later in the follow-up email, so you can find out how you can make all of this look nice. So yeah, that is just to bring up the issue of heat at our workplace, because bringing it up once it is already super hot is normally too late. It's a really good idea to start talking about it before it is getting super hot. Then Shelly has already mentioned this idea of bringing thermometers into our workplaces and measuring how hot it gets in our workplaces and doing a health and safety assessment. So you can do that any day during that week, but it's on Thursday that we'll really try and push some of these pictures out on social media. Miranda has already told you our hashtags are Too Hot to Work and Heat Strike. So if you can do these health and risk assessments, that's great. But it's even better if we don't just talk to our employers about this, but also really push it out into the public sphere and create a debate around it. So that's why we would encourage you to take pictures of the thermometers and send them out there so we can sort of augment the reach and start a conversation around how hot it's already getting just on a normal summer day in the UK. And then on Fire Friday, we're going to have a little rally outside Parliament. We have just had confirmation from the Fire Brigades Union that their fire, I think they have a protest fire truck that's going to be free that day. So we're going to bring this truck outside Parliament to really make it impossible for politicians to ignore what's going on. And the idea really is to bring representatives from different unions together to sort of visibly show that this is something that unites people from across the board. So we're going to send you a form after this webinar. So you could fill in and let us know if you can make it. It's going to be in London, so it's not going to be perfect for everyone. We're going to do it at 6 p.m, so hopefully for many of you it's going to be after your work hours. But yeah, appreciate might not be super accessible for everyone. But if you have a work uniform that you can wear it. If you have a union banner that you could bring it, just to really create a nice imagery of who we are and how we can stand together in this. Oh, yeah, I think that's it, actually. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Frieda, and thank you, Miranda. I'm not sure where she's gone. But before we take some of the questions that you've posted, Shelly, I think you wanted to say something about the week that we chose for inspections.
Yes, so just to say, there's been a couple of comments in the chat about schools in particular who are breaking up. I know the Scottish school term is different from the one in England and Wales. So if you want to do the Heat Week of Action a week earlier, that's absolutely fine. Sign up for it now anyway. And we'll be sending out the feedback form before that date anyway, so you can certainly take part in the week of action a little bit early or a little bit late if you're on holiday that week or something. It doesn't actually have to be that specific week. It's just we've chosen that week because it tends to be the hottest. But no worries if you want to do it before and after. You'll still get your credential. I also just want to say, somebody in the chat suggested that we make a model policy that reps can use in negotiations with management, which sets out what maximum workplace temperature should be. I'll make one of those, and you can get that in your week of action packs as well.
Thanks, Shelley. We're going to take a few of the questions that we've had posted. I think the first one I'm going to put to you. Can you talk a bit about social care settings for us? Social care workers often don't have one place of work. They're visiting people in their homes or in care homes, nursing homes, etc. So it's a whole different kind of situation from the ones we perhaps have been talking about in the majority of the webinar. What advice have you got, Shelley?
Yeah, thanks to the care worker that asked this question. I did reply in the Q&A function a little bit, but let me just say a little bit more because I think it's really relevant to lots of people that are going out and doing site visits. So I would say that reps could be working with managers to build in heatwave precaution policies into that care planning. So introducing things like shorter visits during very hot conditions if possible, shifting work to cooler times of the day, so avoiding that kind of peak heat period if possible, adding in rest breaks, rehydration opportunities into those shifts, recording the heat risks in individual care plans as well. And if you will rep, making sure that you're recording where the hottest places are at what times of the day so you can feed that back to management. They should also be equipping you with things like portable fans, water bottles, more lightweight uniforms. There should be you're feeding back when homes or sites are dangerously hot, asking if the temperature can be adjusted temporarily or if windows can be opened safely, for example. There are things that you might be able to do on a more personal basis. But where that's possible, report that without fear of reprisal, get the union involved. It's not just about your safety as well, it's about the safety of the people that you're caring for or the clients that you've got as well. And I think in the longer term, reps and unions could be campaigning for more sector-specific guidance on working in extreme heat.
Thanks, Shelley. We had a question emailed into us about bus drivers. They say that sometimes in their cab it can reach 30 degrees plus. They say it's like being in a mobile greenhouse. So they said they have used our form on driver fatigue, and other colleagues have used them as well. But have you got any specific advice about this situation? Because a bus is, again, it's a different type of workplace than perhaps ones we've been talking about earlier.
Yeah, it is, and it's one that's that comes with a lot of responsibility as well. You've done the absolute right thing by using that driver fatigue notification form. And fatigue and heat go hand in hand. It's a real risk, and of course, there's a real serious risk of accident if you're driving and you can't concentrate properly. So definitely encourage members to fill that out whenever needed, especially during the heat wave. Make sure members really know that that's there. Keep copies for union records to help show that there is a pattern of concern. But I'd be asking the employer, what does the risk assessment say? Have you got a heat wave specific risk assessment? Lots of large employers have things like terrorism risk assessments, but they don't have one for heat waves. So what are the extraordinary policies that are in place? What is the heat wave action plan? Are you monitoring cab temperatures? And if the employer's not, then maybe we should start doing it and reporting that back. What adjustments are in place? Are there fewer routes that are running? Are the shift patterns being changed around? Are we doing shorter shifts with more staff? And if so, have they got a kind of recruitment plan in place for that? Are they, introducing sunshades, fans, reflective glass? What is going on? What is being done to protect people? And I know that some of the transport unions have got some really hot campaigns on this, been drawing attention to it, been doing flash protests and things like that. So definitely get involved in the heat week of action. I think bus driving, train driving, all of those jobs are really, really important here.
Thanks, Shelley. The next question I'm going to put to Miranda and Frieda. I don't know, but it might be a tricky one. You talked about the removing yourself from the workplace under Section 44 and the right we have there. How does that work in the NHS if there are clinical caseloads? Obviously, NHS is our biggest employer. And many people employed there will have this concern.
I can go for it. Well, just to be clear, we're not experts on this, right? So we want people to be aware of it because we've become aware of it. So I would recommend sort of speaking to your union, finding out for yourself what your rights are. I think if you have emergency work, then obviously that's a little bit different. And I know like for the FBU that we work with closely as well, it's a bit different because they're frontline emergency service workers. I would say, you know, if you want to find out more, come to our Section 44 training. But yeah, I think the important thing for us is that people are aware that they have this right, and it will apply differently in different workplaces. And we haven't got all the answers for every workplace, but we want to encourage you to kind of to be aware of it, that like there's power in being aware of it. And, you know, you can get in touch with us and we can work together to get that information. Frieda, do you want to add anything to that?
Just that there are these other ways of taking part in heat strike if you are, for example, going to work as an emergency worker on the day, so you can't actually just stop working. So there are these other ways in which you can sort of post about things, you know, put up posters, show solidarity, like as Miranda said, probably the fire brigades union is going to do on the day. Yeah, and I think there are ways of, I think someone mentioned earlier, for example, that they took leave on a day when they thought it was going to get really hot and they didn't actually want to work. So I feel like there are probably ways of like getting around having to use Section 44, because that is a relatively high bar thing to do, because there's these different pieces of evidence that you have to provide in order to make it legitimate. But yeah, as Miranda said, get in touch and we can find creative ways in which we can make it work for you.
Thanks, Frieda. Shelly, what advice would you have for someone who is outsourced or freelance? We've talked a lot about the employer today, but obviously people in this situation have a bit of a different relationship with that person or that organisation.
Yeah, well, hopefully they still have a very strong relationship with their union and would still be able to be covered by any protections. So I would say make sure you're in the union, make sure you're working with the union, particularly any colleagues who are insourced, and pushing for policies that cover you as much as it does everybody else. The employer still has the, you know, a duty to protect your health and safety. Just because you're not directly employed, that doesn't change. So although there might be sort of concerns about getting involved in certain actions, you still got the right to be protected, and all of those sort of control measures should be in place for you as well. So yeah, I would say if you're not already a rep, then speak to your rep and try and get advice if you're working in the heat wave and you've got concerns about your health and safety. I'll just say as well, that question from the NHS worker about you know, leaving the workplace or taking part in heat strike. It's not easy, but your right to safety at work doesn't just disappear because you've got a duty of care, whether it's to a patient or somebody else that you're responding to. If you're, you know, becoming dizzy, you're faint, you're otherwise unwell from the heat, that can count as a serious risk. And, you know, you need to inform your employer or your supervisor immediately, and ideally get union support straight away. Document it, whatever the temperature was, whatever the symptoms were that you felt, make sure that support you didn't receive it's been reported back really clearly. It doesn't mean walking out without warning, especially in a clinical setting, but, you know, raise it first, tell the manager, say you're too hot to work safely, and ask for immediate adjustments. Get support from your union rep, occupational health, or a colleague. But do step back safely, move to a cooler area, hand over to another colleague if it's needed, because a lot of this is about your individual health and safety. As much as it might be hot for everybody, you might have a particular funny turn, and you need to take that time out. In general, we need to be pushing for those heat wave risk assessments in every department, in every workplace. We need to be making sure that there are policies that allow staff to escalate heat-related concerns without being penalised. And we need to be using that union power to document and to challenge any poor practices and share examples of where heat is causing real harm. I'm really looking forward to seeing who gets involved in the Heat Week of Action and putting more pressure on the government to do what it needs to introduce that maximum working temperature. Thanks everyone for taking part today.
I think that's a brilliant note to sort of finish on with regards to the subject. That was so well put, Shelley. Thank you. Thank you all for joining today. You've been fantastic. As I said, there's been a huge number of resources. We will share them all with you, along with a recording of today, either before, either later this afternoon, or it might be first thing tomorrow. There have been quite a lot of them, and we need a bit of time to compile them. The power of showing you this on screen. I can already see that loads of you have put in your orders. They keep popping up on my laptop. So do order this. It's hot off the press. You'll be able to get all the information about your rights as a safety rep from this brand new version for you. It's great that you've all asked so many good questions today. I want to thank Shelly, Frieda and Miranda for joining me. We'll see you again soon for another webinar. Try and stay cool and hopefully try and enjoy the sunshine in your downtime as well. Bye-bye for now.